Actually, I own 2 pieces of her work that I stole from the darkroom. Actually, it's not true. She actually gave me one. And the other one is the one that was printed for the catalog at the end of the graduation ones. And I still look at that because the print is a Richard Benson print. And the other print, the darkroom print, is a Lil Winnie print. And they look marvelously great. I'm still trying to decide which one to frame. Anyway, I'm very happy that Lynn and I connected, and that I was able to offer her this exhibit, this show. It's a very interesting show to me because I do have a history of science degree in the background over there that I did nothing with. and so this much I can do now. And I also was I was very curious about this work because it's a collaboration. And believe it or not, I have only been in this town for 2 years now, but a lot of the call for entries, for some reason, are collaboration entries. So this is sort of dovetailing very well with my assimilation in Santa Fe. Also, I had to ask secretly how to pronounce her last name correctly, because I have one that neither one of my 2 wives ever took. Yeah. So Professor Boulojan.
That's fine.
It's terrific.
Well done.
I read extensively all his research. I think it was about a page and a half. So without further ado, now that you have a little background here, I would let the collaborators speak because I will never do justice to it.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Okay, thanks everybody. Really, this is so sweet that all of you came and you're here and looking and so forth. I just will begin by saying how this work began for me. It began from a commission from the George Gunn Foundation in Cleveland. The George Gunn Foundation in Cleveland, there's little QR codes around here which you can take a picture of and find out more about. But they are a terrific nonprofit who supports the endeavors of the human being in Cleveland, most appropriately issues of inclusion and diversity, climate, and so forth. So it's a big deal to get a commission from them because they make annual reports, and those are really almost always snoozy. But the designer of those annual reports, way back when, enlisted the help of photographers, black and white photographers, to sort of highlight the current issue that the annual report was trying to address most of all in each year. So if you go and do the QR thing, you can get a list of all those photographers, and I'm really proud to be among them. So you have 6 weeks to make pictures, and you got to get a lot of them. I work with an 8x10 camera. An 8x10 camera, for those of you who don't know, has a tripod, 3 legs, and it's 8x10 inch in size. The contact prints in that room are the size of the negative that I print. And so it's a big ass camera with with a dark cloth, and my presence is absolutely, I can't be, invisible. And so with that sort of entree, I try to milk it, if you know what I mean. I try to let people know who I am and what I'm about. And with that, and with the presence of this camera, I'm allowed access to people that I don't think in this day and age people would give access most readily to me. That sentence was terrible. Somebody will edit that sentence. But anyway, you get what I mean. So I can have this intimacy with my subject, and as a result, there's this generous exchange, which I really, really appreciate. So the 6 weeks I worked with the Gund, there's several pictures in the smaller room which represent a lot of that work. But there are certain themes in there I said I needed to develop further. I wanted to know more. I wanted to find out about this lake, this great lake that had such a history that I knew about from Dr. Seuss, and also from growing up and from being a 50s kid who in the 70s had Earth Day for the first time as a result of the Cuyahoga River, which George will speak about. So with the commission, that got me sort of launched and like, oh, I'm legitimized, you know what I mean? Like, it gives me a purpose, I have entree, I could go into the Breton Estates I'm with the George Gunn Foundation, and they would say, come in. And so I could, I could be there for that. And anyway, so as the years have gone on, and it's been about 12 years I've been accumulating photographs, the culture certainly has changed, the politics have gotten more ripe, and I'm reflecting all of that. Plus my own personal history is reflected in some of these images as well. So I would be happy to answer any questions about any specifics. Okay, I'll let George talk about, I wanted to, so I should say this.
What?
So when the opportunity to show here arose, and I wanted to show Lake Erie, I thought Lake Erie in the desert needs a little bit of context. So, and George had brought me out on his boat, his research boat a couple years back, and I thought, George, he was so fun. I felt like we grew up together, because we almost did.
Yeah.
We were from the same town, we went to similar schools, we probably went to dances together. So I wrote him an email and I said, George, you want to collaborate? And within 4 minutes, he wrote back and said, absolutely.
Yeah, I answer emails quickly because otherwise I forget, so.
I took it as a sign.
Well, it was a sign, but if you catch me at 6 o'clock when I'm going home, I won't answer the next morning, and by then I've forgotten. So you were lucky. Okay, good. But this has been wonderful to be working with you. So this is
so
great.
much fun. Thank you.
And so my name's George Bullerjohn. I'm a microbiologist, and I'm funded by the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation to study the microbiology of water. And with respect to Lake Erie, it's we study the good microbes and the bad microbes that affect water quality, that influence that we have to use the Great Lakes as drinking water. If the microbiology is bad things happen. And so coming to the desert, really Lake Erie was inspired the first Earth Day, which is next week. And in 1969, the Cuyahoga River caught fire. And that was a seminal event which led to the founding of the Environmental Protection Act and the EPA, and Earth Day the following year. Now, what's kind of interesting is that when the Cuyahoga River caught fire, everybody was made aware of this. But that was actually the 12th time it caught fire. It was actually a small fire. They've been happening for 100 years, and some of which resulted in millions of dollars of property damage and deaths. But this was a small fire, but for some reason that was that was just the moment that everybody said, this is wrong. And so Lake Erie is a beautiful place. I think you'll see that from the pictures. I think you'll see I wrote some essays here that describe kind of how vast they are and the sorts of challenges that they face. But given the history, in the 70s, the lake was declared dead. Environmental policies were implemented such that the lake improved. And then at the turn of the century, the lake began to decline again. And so what we see now, it used to be it was urban and industrial pollution. Now we're seeing agricultural pollution where nutrients enter the lake and they fuel these algal blooms, these bacterial blooms to produce toxins. In 2014, there was a toxic bloom which resulted in the shutdown of the water supply for the city of Toledo for 400,000 people. Again, that made the national news, maybe not this far, but it was again something that we all cared about. And so what we got to realize, this may be a desert, and we may be sitting on the largest, vastest, vastest amount of fresh water in America, perhaps even the world. But if we don't treat it right, that water becomes just as scarce as anywhere else. And so now we're seeing these harmful algal blooms, not only in Lake Erie, and we're figuring out ways to fix it, and that's kind of partly my job. But we're seeing them elsewhere. We're seeing them in Utah Lake, resulting in a shutdown of drinking water in Provo. Detroit Lake, Oregon, resulted in a water supply shutdown in the city of Salem, the capital of Oregon. So these are problems which are getting worse. What we learn about Lake Erie is is transferable, those, in developing technologies to improve these things, is transferable to other sites where these problems are happening. But I think I've said enough as it is, but that's kind of what I'm interested in and what I find is really valuable about the work that I do, and I think it's tremendous that Lynn can kind of show how people interact with the lake and how important it is to all the people who live around Lake Erie. And I wrote some text, and you could read that. Probably more, it's better than what I'm saying right now. With that, and please enjoy yourself, and it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank
Do you have any
George.
questions?
Yeah, questions, anybody have anything?
Yes. What caused the fires 100 years ago?
It was
Industrial?
Yeah, it was all, everything's all industrial. And so it was petroleum products and logs that have been cut off. I mean, there are pictures of the Cuyahoga River, and it was basically a sewer. Anything that the city of Cleveland didn't want was put in the river, and we don't do that anymore. Okay? So there's a great picture. I don't know if you've seen it, where the entire Cuyahoga River, this is back from the 50s, there was an automobile graveyard running along the entire river, and so you have like DeSotos and Packards that were just kind of face down along the bank, and they would actually stabilize the bank. So instead of riprap, we had old cars.
Precursor to riprap.
100 years before, there were fires in the Thames.
Yeah.
In Philadelphia, where I live,
Yeah.
the Delaware was often on fire in the.
I think it can still happen now because at the Marcus Hook refinery, they'll get a fire happening in the water there, so, yeah. So, you're from Philly, you've probably heard, originally, you've probably heard about fires all the time, so. Yeah,
So this is a question for Lynn. Lynn, I really first fell in love with your work because of the stories that are embedded in the pieces. And yet, as I look around the room, all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, there's a whole other Lynn here that I didn't even know about, which is much more about geometry and light. Obviously, light's important, but compare this photograph of the young man with the fishing pole and the factory behind. There's all kinds of story and embedded in there. And this one is much more, it seems like it's much more about something technical or something. Can you reflect on that?
Reflect on that?
Are there two of you? I didn't.
It may be that I can't decide. No. I'm looking at it from every angle, the lake, and that's as much of a personality, I think that house is, as this boy is. This boy with the mohawk, and then referencing back to what we've done to all the indigenous people. And so everything I photograph becomes a little character in my story. So that's a house that looks like, oh my gosh, it's just connected with one little wire. And it's out in this really desolate, very cold. It was freezing making that photograph, and the wind whipping and so forth, and nobody living there except in summer.
Yeah.
And it just sort of stands there kind of like, okay, I'll make it. It seems so fragile, that thing, and just held by that wire. But that's a good question, Mary.
Eddie has a question.
Eddie,
So
are you
is,
gonna ask me a Yale Crit question?
no. So you shot with a 8x10,
I did.
and it's not like you walk around like what we do now. It's like you have to put it down, and
Yeah.
so it's not like obviously we shot photograph for the moment, but you shot photograph for the whole kind of the situation because you have to sit it down and shot it. So tell us a little bit about how you capture the moment, because by the time you see something, by the time you set up, it's slightly different in
Oh,
terms of.
absolutely, yeah, that's.
So how
really
does
good.
that work?
Yeah, sometimes it's a real pain, because I set up and everything doesn't work, and then you just sort of fold up and go away and try something else. But for instance, the photograph behind you there. This one, I've seen that log. That log has been there. Everybody uses that log to sit on. But in this particular day, that log had the birders who are trying to find the warblers, which the McGee Marsh is a really great transportation route for the little warblers that fly across Lake Erie. So the biggest week is the second week of May, and I've gone out there every year to photograph the birders, those that are looking. And in a lot of ways, that's what I do. I'm going out there to look, to try to find, to look carefully. And so those birders are there, they're having their lunch. And then the grandmother is there with her little granddaughter who's dressed in some sort of tutu thing, and her little curly, what is that, a braid? And then the dog sort of trying to find some sort of shade. And lo and behold, at my feet is the fish. And it all made sense. And
Did
so,
you buy the fish?
yeah, that fish was there, and they don't notice the fish because I'm downwind from it. I'm downwind from it, they're upwind, and so they're not noticing the fish, but I'm noticing the fish, and it just all sort of came together as this moment where they're by the Great Lake Erie. It's kind of humbling, this whole thing, and the walleye being this, sort of belly up dead fish is just what happens, but also it harkens to how fragile life is in the lake itself, and how fragile maybe that moment is between the exchange of the grandmother and the granddaughter, that little, like, almost, what's that called you guys in artistry?
The touch.
The touch,
The Sistine
that
Chapel.
little touch, that's a Sistine Chapel touch. Yeah, I can elevate it that far,
Creation.
but then I can say, well, there's the cell phone and the car keys, and we're not very far from civilization. We're
Yeah,
not
but
very far.
she's not paying attention to the cell phone.
No, but it's still there. It's
And
gonna
also not
ding.
paying attention to the fish, which is the real point of the picture.
Well, they're not paying attention because they don't know it's there. Only I do because I'm there smelling it.
But
Well,
all
it's
that,
the issue of not being aware of the fish.
Exactly, Stuart. Thank you. Yeah, they're not. They're in their world. The lake, water draws us because we're made of water, and I think it draws us all the time to just kind of imagine and be, and sort of, it's a calming force, isn't it? And it's just a place to rest our crazy monkey minds.
It's also make all these photographs so special because you really have to set this whole thing, all the work behind it
Yeah.
with the full size, negative and all
I get
that.
their permission.
Okay.
I get their permission and I say, just continue what you're doing. That's what I say. And then if I need to, I say, please hold it. But most of the time, I don't need to even say that.
Wow.
With this guy, I had to say, hold it.
And he's holding it.
Yeah, and he's holding it. But he,
It's putting the right amount of tension on the rod.
yeah, he
too.
didn't argue at all.
Okay.
No, he was very
Perfect.
happy.
Perfect.
You gotta go find him in like 3 years.
Yeah, I do, that's good.
Do you send them copies of your pictures?
I do.
That must
Yeah,
be so
if-
great for them.
Yeah, this one they were very happy with.
I'll bet.
Yeah, very happy with that.
I would be.
Yeah.
And with this one, this is an early Gund picture, George Gund picture. I didn't realize how important it would become until I learned how important it is now, of the Black experience and parks and the inaccessibility that they are. But at the moment that I made the photograph, I was so captivated by this, which I just loved. I loved Blizzard. I loved her nails. I loved that at the moment that I was making this picture, I didn't ask for this. This woman stuck her hand out to see if it was raining. And so as the picture lived its life after 2019, it's changed its title. So now it's called Climate Test, which it tests the climate of the politics, it tests the climate of the climate at climate. So, and I just really love this one.
Oh, yeah.
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 What brand is the air freshener?
That's those pine scented ones. Yeah. Yeah, and it's just funny. I'm sticking my big ass camera in their car. practically.
How close to them are you when you took that?
Okay, if that's them, I'm about here,
Wow.
Wow.
or maybe here, or maybe here. I don't remember, something like that. Yeah. And
That's
with Mildred behind you guys, right there, Mildred, and then I'll be quiet and you can talk about it.
no, please.
But with Mildred,
I know, it's one of my favorites.
Mildred her name is perfect, besides that. Yeah, and she's Amish. And early in my lifetime, I always wanted I photographed sisters in convents who were young. That was a body of work that I'm really still very interested in sort of trying to do something with.
That's why I stole the photograph.
So I'm always interested in the identity of a person and the wrappings we all put ourselves in to sort of show ourselves off to whatever world we're trying to be embedded in. And anyway, a year before this picture was made, I'd found her family and her sisters, and I'd photographed her with her sisters, and they were terrible pictures. But I still was mad, and I was mad at myself because I didn't make a good one. But then I came back the following year for the next biggest week, and there Mildred was by herself, and I said, please, may I? And she said, yes, you may. And this is the Amish. They don't want their photographs taken. So this tells you a lot about how times have changed for their boundaries and their inaccessibility, which no longer exists in the same way as it did once. They're terrific birders, the Amish. They really are. So you want to follow them around. Yeah, they're really good. They know their birds. So I'll just tell you the last picture over there. Well, no, there's two more. That one over here, this is more personal. No one will get it but me and the people who know this person who was named Dawn. Dawn was a colleague in art history at our school, Bowling Green State University, in the School of Art. She was my very first friend when I first came out to this Midwest landscape. And she sort of took me under her wing, and she took Claude is right here, my husband, took Claude under her wing, and she was like Auntie Dawn. She didn't get married until much later. One thing she said, this is too personal maybe, but I'm gonna just say it because you guys are all friends now. We were going up to Ann Arbor for our little time away, and she looked in the mirror and she said, who would marry this face? And it just broke my heart. And then Bob came into her life, and Bob and she got married, and they lived in separate houses. So there was a weirdness always, but we as a family just embraced the two of them. I was so happy. She seemed happy. And then bit by bit, after she retired from school, because Bob made her, she got more and more passive. She was a very strong female mentor for me, and she began sentences towards the end with, well, Bob thinks, well, Bob says, well, Bob believes. And so it just was like, wait a second, what's happening? And we all have our theories about what did happen, but it ended up in May of 2013. She was found dead in her house. And the stupid Bowling Green, police really messed up the investigation. And if it hadn't been for an accountant who called and said, you better pay attention to this, we wouldn't have as much information about what actually happened. Anyway, she was murdered. She wasn't just an old woman who fell down and died. She was murdered, and we know that it was Bob. But anyway, he's never been brought to any kind of trial because we didn't have any smoking gun. And this was devastating to our community, to our family, to all of us. It was just totally devastating. So the next year, I'm out photographing. This woman was out watering her geraniums in a red top with black pants, with her hair perfect and her watering can. And I said, wow, somebody who's a color photographer would make a very bad color picture of this, I'm sure of that. And so I decided I'll make my very bad color picture of this, the red, black, and red geraniums and blue water in the background. And as I made my bad color pictures, I realized, no, I don't want to make a bad color picture. And then as I got closer, and I love the watering can's so great, I looked and I said, and my jaw just dropped to the ground because she's absolutely a spitting image of our friend Dawn. And so when, if you want to look it up, Cold Justice came to our house and filmed us. You know Cold Justice? That
Cold Justice,
yes, and filmed us. So her nephew came to our house, and I pulled this picture out, and Dean said, and Dean's, his jaw just dropped to the ground because it's so spitting image. So anyway, all of that story is in that picture, but nobody would know that but me. But what it did was it turned my mind towards what exactly I'm doing, which is I'm looking at this lake really as this body, you know, this body, this female body, really, that's been kind of used a lot, abused a ton, and now we're trying to stop that.
All right, thank you.
Also, you should just turn around the corner. Sorry, Stuart, you just gave me a wink. But around the corner, there's a picture called Bitch.
I like that one.
And so I've turned that to mean, and the lake is our bitch. And I didn't realize what I was photographing until I actually realized what I was photographing. Like, so for me, it was like a little person just making a little house, you know, out of sticks and stones, like I used to do. Instead, they were spelling the word bitch. Anyway, enjoy the show, I hope. Okay.
Thank you for your beautiful eye.
What? Let's go away. I want to thank a lot of people, but and Carolyn and Dick, right there. Carolyn, where did Dick go? Dick is right in front of me. These guys, when I told them about this, these guys, the next day, made reservations to come out here and help me hang and help me see. And without them, I don't know where I'd be. And I also want to thank Eddie, who's filming the whole thing, because without him, I would have absolutely no way to do labels. I didn't know what the heck to do about labels, and even hanging and any of it. And then finally, well, there's not finally ever, but because there's more people I'll forget, but that Claudio's right there.
No.
He came in, my husband, and did the lighting and did the tweaking and has been support all the way through.
I've got photos of him.
And then Marius, thank you, and I mean, Giorgio's, thank you, and everybody thanks.
A pleasure.
And my kids came in. This is Maggie and her boyfriend Arthur. Where'd Sam go?
Right here.
And Sammy right there. They all came in for this from different parts of this country, Louisville and Washington State. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate the fact that I can help this exhibit because I'm trying very hard to do thematic shows, and certainly this here's the definition of thematic. And so thank you very much.
Thanks, Marius.
Welcome to Santa Fetish.
That's good.
Good, how are you?
That's very nice.